and their amazing kids were with us for almost 4 years. Patrick is now the lead pastor of the Hills Church in Evansville, Indiana. He is a great communicator and he loves Compass Christian Church. Let's worship, and then I can't wait for you to hear my great friend, Patrick Garcia.
Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus, just to take him at his word, just to rest upon his promise, just to know the safe the Lord. And Jesus, Jesus, I trust him, how I've proved him more and more. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, hope for grace to trust him more. Oh, how sweet to trust in Jesus, just to trust his cleansing blood, just in simple faith to plunge beneath the healing cleansing flood. And Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I've proved him more and more. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more. And I'm so glad I learned to trust thee, precious Jesus, Savior, friend. And I know that thou art with me, will be with me to the end. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I've proved him more and more. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more.
I wanted to share something out of this devotional. It's called New Morning Mercies, written by Paul David Tripp, and it's just a short devotion for every day. And I wanted to share something that I thought was so timely right now. He says, so be careful how you make sense of your life. What looks like a disaster may in fact be grace. What looks like the end may be the beginning. What looks hopeless may be God's instrument to give you real and lasting hope. Your Father is committed to taking what seems so bad and turning it into something that is very, very good. We're about to end worship with Goodness of God, and it is one of my favorite songs for many reasons. But today, my prayer is that each and every one of us focus on the goodness and the faithfulness of our Heavenly Father.
Till I lay my
Hey Compass Church, my name is Patrick, and you may not know me, but I had the privilege of serving on staff with you guys from 2010 to 2013. I maybe didn't know it so much at the time, but that was an incredible experience for me that really helped me see what a church can look like and what the church is meant to be, and how to maintain focus in the 21st century. And so you guys know this, but you're so blessed to have Drew Sherman as your lead pastor. I not only learned so much from Drew during my time at Compass, but continue to, and Drew is one of my closest friends to this day. I don't know how you've personally responded to this whole COVID-19 crisis. I don't know if you've been let go from a job, if you've been sidelined for a while. I don't know how much money you've maybe lost in the stock market or your 401k, how that's doing. All right, but there's no shortage of reasons for us to be afraid, for us to experience fear and worry about what's going to happen in the future. And so what I want to do is I want to talk from Psalm chapter 46. If you have your Bible right there in front of you, or maybe you have the YouVersion Bible app on your iPad or digital device, go ahead and pull up Psalm 46, all right? And as you're turning there, let me just kind of summarize all the fears that we have into 5 different categories. You may not know this, but when you and I are born, when we're first born, we're babies, we only have 2 fears that we naturally have from day one. And those fears are the fear of loud noises, okay, and the fear of falling. That means that every other fear, every other, worry that we experience is something that's learned. It's absorbed. Maybe it's the result of having endured a traumatic circumstance. I don't know what that looks like for you, okay? But chances are we don't just have the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling. So maybe that's not something that you can identify with, but the first fear that we could summarize that we tend to battle goes like this: the fear of loss. Okay? The fear of loss. This can mean anything from, you fear losing your job, you fear losing a child, a grandchild, you fear losing money from your retirement account, you fear, what does that look like for you? For me personally, I have a golden retriever that's 12 years old. I adore her. I love her to death. And yet, there's a part of me that's a little bit afraid, because I know she's not getting younger, she's not getting healthier, and there will be a day, probably sooner than later, in which she will die. I don't want that to happen, and I'm afraid of that day. I'm afraid of mourning her loss. So it can be something that is extremely significant. Fearing the loss of a loved one, too, maybe something that you wouldn't say is significant. So the fear of loss. Secondly, there's the fear of failure. Now, I think we can all identify with this, especially as Americans. We want to be successful. We want to project achievement, right? And so we have naturally this fear of failure, all right? We all define success differently depending on the areas of life that we're talking about. Maybe you fear failing as a mom. You fear failing as a dad. You fear failing as a grandparent, as a step-parent. All right, you fear failing at homeschooling. Okay, you never thought you would be homeschooling your children, and yet for the past few months, that's what you've been doing. And the thing that keeps you up at night is wondering, am I doing a good job? You fear failure in that way. All right, thirdly, maybe you fear rejection. That's the third thing, the fear of rejection. All right, we're born with this innate need to be loved and to be accepted, to be cherished, okay? And yet, the one thing that we never want to experience, that we maybe work really hard in life to avoid, and that is rejection, not feeling included. We want to be a part of something, right? And this is painful and deep for many of us. Maybe you fear, as an adult, you fear being rejected by a child, being cut off from your grandchildren. You fear being rejected for the promotion. Because you see, when we are rejected, that's in essence telling us, hey, I'm not good enough. Right? I didn't measure up. None of us want that. Fourthly, there's the fear of uncertainty. All right? And do you know how I usually identify this one? We say things like, I'm a planner. I like to know what the strategy is. I like to know what the plan is. I like to be organized. And so we like to arrange our life in such a way in which there's a lot of order, there's a lot of structure, because we find comfort in knowing what's going to happen next. Do you know what I'm talking about? Now, uncertainty maybe is the opposite of security for you. And so those are four fears. Here's the fifth fear. Okay, there's the fear of disappointment. Now, when I say fear of disappointment, I think that this is something that as men, it especially resonates with us, okay? Because we are driven to succeed. We are driven to be told, hey, I'm proud of you. I'm good enough. I measure up. And even when we know we failed, we try to at least project. We project success. We project achievement because we don't want to disappoint the people that are counting on us. Now, I personally fear not making the people in my life proud of me. So again, we want to measure up. And to measure up, we have to keep up with trends and styles on Instagram, because what do? We compare ourselves. And so there's this weight all around us that causes us to lose a lot of sleep, to panic, and to be afraid. Worry is really the way that we respond to these fears. And that word worry in English is actually a translation from an old High German language that literally means, to constrict, strangle, or choke. That's what the word worry originally meant, to constrict, kind of like a snake, a python killing its prey, strangle or choke. And so worry, you see, is how we train ourselves to respond to fear. And so I don't know what you're afraid of. I don't know what gives you panic attack. But I do know that the one thing we all have in common is we all have things that we're afraid of. And so how do we deal with that? Well, in Psalm 46, what I love about the Psalms, is that it's this personal journal from a few different writers of the emotions that these writers were feeling. And so there's kind of this, at times you think the writer's bipolar, because on one sentence he's talking about how much confidence he has in God, and yet the next second it's like, God, why have you abandoned me? God, where are you? You said you would be there for me, and yet my enemies are surrounding me. So it's like, is this the same person? Like, somebody didn't take their medication that day, And yet what I love about the Psalms is that it's so transparent, raw, and honest. It's the way that we can identify tools in which we connect with God. And so here in Psalm 46, verses 1 through 5, we see the psalmist responding to fear. Check out what we read, okay? God is our refuge and strength. Hear that declaration. Always ready to help in times of trouble. So we will not fear when earthquakes come and the mountains crumble into the sea. Let the oceans roar and foam. Let the mountains tremble as the waters surge. A river brings joy to the city of our God, the sacred home of the Most High. God dwells in that city. So the psalmist is referring to Jerusalem, which back in the ancient world was kind of believed to be the residence of God. God inhabited Jerusalem. It was this special place back in this time in which they believed God was closest to. God dwells in that city. It cannot be destroyed. From the very break of day, God will protect it. And so what I love about what we read right here is that regardless of what the circumstances were telling this writer, the writer comes to the table declaring who God is. And you see, we have a choice to make. When our problems seem too big, will we remember or forget who God really is? Because my experience has been is that when our problems seem so big, it's because our view of God is way too small. Now, what we don't read right here in our text is that our intellect is our strength. That's not what we read. We don't read, our personality is our strength, or our skill set is our strength, or our Enneagram score is our strength. We don't read that. Our leaders are our strength. Our pastors are our strength. elected officials are our strength. That's not what we read. All right, combating fear is less about what to do and more about how to correct our focus. And so the psalmist right here replaces the voices of worry by declaring who God has always promised to be to us. Now it's interesting that in verse 5 it ends with the confidence that God will protect us no matter the turmoil that we experience. Let's wrap up by looking at verses 7 through 10. The Lord of heaven's armies is here among us. The God of Israel is our fortress. Verse 10, be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. I will be honored by every nation. I will be honored throughout the world. The Lord of heaven's armies is here among us. The God of Israel is our fortress. And so again, combating fear is less about what to do and more about how to correct our focus. And so it's almost as if you hear the psalmist saying right here, hey, when you feel yourself losing breath because you feel panic coming upon you, that's the precise moment in which we are to stop. We are to reflect, take a deep breath, relax, turn off the news, quit scrolling on social media, be still, and remember who's in charge. Let me just leave you with an attack strategy, okay, that I think is applicable with what you might be going through right now, because it's one thing to hear this, but it's another to actually apply it to our life. And so here's an attack strategy for when you feel like you're experiencing a panic attack, when you're experiencing worry. Okay, number one, name your fear. What is that? All right, remember just a few minutes ago I listed off the 5 fears. Which one or 2 or maybe 3 do you feel like really connects with what you struggle with? Don't avoid it, but just name it. Bring it out of the darkness. Number 2, declare what God has done. Now, this isn't avoiding reality. This isn't a quick fix. This isn't, something that will automatically change your circumstances. No, but what it does is it helps shift your focus, and it reminds you from an inside out of what God has done and what God is doing and what God promises to do in the future. And again, this isn't some magical quick fix, but it is a way to train your mind how to respond to worry. Number 3, ask for help. A psychiatrist, Edward Hallowell, says, never worry alone. All right, so sometimes our worries grow biggest when they stay inside and they remain in the darkness. They lose power, though, when we drag them out into the light and we call up a friend, we talk to a spouse and we say, hey, I know this sounds ridiculous, but here's what I'm worried about. Number 4, take realistic responsibility. Now, what I'm not saying is, don't use wisdom. I'm not saying that the prescription for worry is indifference and just avoiding reality, retreating from culture. No, but adjust your expectations about what you can and can't control. I love verse 10. Be still and know that I am God. What if you memorize that verse today? Be still and know that I am God. One of my favorite stories in the Bible is found in Matthew chapter 8. It's a story of when Jesus is out on a boat. It's dark out, and he's with his closest friends, his 12 followers, and all of a sudden, out on the Sea of Galilee, this big storm appears out of nowhere. Now, I've been there, and it's easy to see from the terrain how storms just appeared out of nowhere, and they were violent, and they raged out in the middle of this big lake, okay? And so the waves are pouring into the boat, and it's like the rain is the wind is so strong that the rain is coming down sideways. Do you know what I'm talking about? And the disciples, the friends of Jesus, are so panicked and are so worried. They are convinced that they're going to die. They're convinced, hey, this is it. Where's Jesus? He's in the very back of the boat, asleep. Now, this kind of upsets the disciples a little bit. They're like, how can you be sleeping in the midst of this storm? So they wake Jesus up. Jesus stands up, and we're told that he rebuked the wind and the waves, and he said, "Peace, peace, be still." See, Jesus has authority over nature like that. And if Jesus can tell the wind and the waves what to do, that means he has authority over the storm in your life. He has authority over the storm that you maybe have yet to experience. And one of the best things that we can do is to be still and know that he is God. Because Matthew then tells us that the disciples then gathered together after this moment and they said, "Who is this man that even the wind and the waves obey him?" That's the God we serve. And so again, I don't know what storm you're going through right now. I don't know what reasons you have to be afraid. I'm not promising you that the storm is just going to cease when you want it to. But what I am promising you is that Jesus is going to be with you no matter what. He never promised us a storm-free life, but he did promise us a storm-proof life, because this is the same God who's asleep in the back of the boat.
Hey, thanks so much for coming to Compass Daily today. I hope you enjoyed Patrick Garcia today, and I hope you come back tonight for Thursday night worship at 6:30. Remember, you can get there at compasschurch.online as well as Facebook and YouTube. We hope to see you there as we finish up our series, Anxious for Nothing. You know, as a staff, we want you to know we're praying for you every day. We're so incredibly amazed at your generosity. You know, as your lead pastor, everywhere I go, I talk about how generous the people of Compass are. It just blows me away. The faithfulness in giving, the faithfulness in generosity. When you and I continue our commitment in giving, it not only continues the work of the church, it helps our community and impacts people around the world. In fact, because of your generosity, we're able to help to take Compass online all over the world, joining our worship experiences every week. It's awesome. You can continue to be generous by clicking on the Give button at the top of the video player, or click on the link in the chat room or comment section, or you can simply text the words Compass Church to 77977. And don't forget to stay connected to Compass Online for our worship experiences